Hi, and welcome to our episode 1 with regard to mainframe modernization. This episode, we're going to talk around from COBOL to cloud and why modernize now. So I'm super pleased and really excited about this next 20-30 minutes podcast. I'm joined by some esteemed guests. I'm joined by Vivek Jinder, who's our Global Vice President of Head of Modernization for Atos Group, and also Raul Panchamati, who's the AWS Mainframe Modernization Go-to-Market Head for Amazon Web Services. Hi, Raul. Hi, Vivek. Pleased to join today. And we're going to talk around a number of things, especially when we look at the mainframe. And I think people talk around the mainframe is dead, but the mainframe is very alive and well. But we do recognize that mainframe is around kind of powering enterprise workloads for decades, but they are becoming constraints. They're constrained in the economics, technically, and also strategic for a number of enterprise businesses today. And modernization, as I see it, isn't necessarily about cost, but it's about driving future readiness, agility, and innovation, and how enterprises today can also drive their growth and their enterprise workloads into cloud. So let's kind of set the scene and kind of then open up a couple of questions to my esteemed colleagues today. So when we look around the modernization of mainframe and some of the kind of challenges that enterprises face today is around things like the talent risk. This is decades of experience in terms of COBOL, potentially an aging workforce, experts retiring, and that kind of skill pool shrinking. Then there's the cost pressures, high MIPS-based licensing, data center OpEx. Everybody wants to move away from the data center because the operating costs associated with that. And then the challenges from a business standpoint is around the agility. So that's slow release cycles. There's no CI/CD, inflexible integration. And as customers and enterprises move to the public cloud and cloud native serverless microservice architectures, then kind of potentially the mainframe's left alone, which then challenges the agility to that as well. So why don't we kick off and kind of kick off the discussion and kind of Raul and Vivek. Maybe Vivek, you can go and kind of what's the number one challenge that enterprises are facing around getting off the mainframe in 2025?
So thank you, Simon. I think that's a very interesting question, especially given that most enterprises have been trying to think of a way out of the mainframe for at least a decade, if not more. However, I think enterprises have faced the challenge of rising maintenance and operational costs and talent shortages for supporting their mainframe applications in this period. The new trend that we are seeing is that the situation has dramatically changed with the advent of AI, be it AI ML, Gen AI, or agentic AI. And enterprises globally are scrambling to adopt the different flavors of AI in the last couple of years, especially to figure out where they can cut costs in their operations for differentiation and innovation. And enterprises which are running business critical applications on mainframes face the challenge in adoption of AI-based solutions. And these challenges essentially stem from the architectural, operational, and cultural differences between the legacy mainframe systems and what the needs are of modern AI-driven environments. And as all of you will be aware, introducing a change in a mainframe-based system is fairly complex. It's challenging and time-consuming, to say the least. And sadly, business cannot afford this kind of latency or lack of agility, since competition is not standing still. And therefore, what you need to do is to be up, alive, and kicking, and make sure that you're right there competing with your competition to generate new revenue streams, optimize your supply chains, automate risk detection, etc. So, in my view, for enterprises using mainframe, their most valuable asset, which is decades of proprietary transactional data, is currently locked away. And the mainframe's architecture, which has been designed for stability, batch processing, is now essentially a digital bottleneck, which translates to lost competitive advantage, market share, or whatever you want to call it. Additionally, adherence to ever increasing regulatory requirements in the upcoming increase in need for sovereign understanding and the ability to access and process data which is stored in proprietary formats is extremely crucial for CIOs and CTOs. And the need to move to open and more flexible data storage systems or an API based architecture, I think becomes even more imperative. So, in my view, in a nutshell, the true cost of the mainframe is no longer the expensive licensing fee or the retiring COBOL staff. It is the true cost is the opportunity lost cost of not being able to leverage AI to generate new revenue streams. And I think the time for debating old challenges is over. The time for enabling AI for the future is now. Thank you.
I love your digital bottleneck. I think that really kind of almost like the digital heart, especially with enterprises and the reliance on mainframe technology of being the heart of the business, that they've transformed the rest of the body, yet the heart that keeps everything pumping hasn't necessarily been transformed. Rao, what's your consideration around enterprises today in 2025 around transformation to the mainframe?
Yeah. So, hello everyone. Simon and Vivek. Nice to meet you. So, I actually have a privilege to talk to hundreds of customers over the last 12 to 18 months, and I really don't want to broad brush. Each customer is at a different stage of their modernization. Their aspirations are different. I will group them into 4 different buckets. The number one is customers are really looking to reduce their TCO, total cost of operations, and as well as reduce their cost. Number two is risk mitigation with a lack of skills in the market, which is inhibiting their innovation. Number two. And number three is more around their agility and adoption of these modern services, where they'll be able to compete with cloud-born, digitally born organizations so that they are relevant in the market down the line, especially with the advent of AI and digital integrations and customer experience, business process optimization, and all. Number four is ESG, environmental and social governance, especially with carbon neutrality and all. When I'm having a conversation with the customer, we basically will drill down into what are their number one and number two aspirations of modernization, and how do we connect those goals align with these, right? So, for example, I'll take a insurance business. They are very tight knit, run the cost reduction, and so that they want to reduce the cost to make more out of their business operations. They may be interested in exit the mainframes quickly in less than 18 months to reduce the on-prem data center costs. But another customer might be interested in the 30-year-old clearing and settlement process running in a similar language, which the people are retiring and they have nobody to manage those billions of dollars settlement end of the day, and they need to kind of exit and modernize those. And another customer must be really looking to kind of compete with their fintechs or whoever their competitors, and their approach will be different. So our goal here is to kind of sit down with the customer and try to find out what are the aspirations and how do we help them accelerate that, aligning with the different approaches we adopt, whether it is replatform, refactor, reimagine. There are different objectives we can use to help these customers. But I think we have to work with the customer, dive deep before making the right approach for each customer, Simon.
And that's a great segue, and kind of as I kind of give some thought consideration around, kind of summarize what are the big drivers potentially to also move to cloud from your mainframe. So when I think of Atos and AWS and it's a great partnership, both from a services and a technology platform, both driving innovation for enterprises today. What are kind of the things that, I'm a CIO, CTO, him or her, what are kind of the things that I need to consider, and how can Atos and AWS helping me move to the mainframe, especially around the risk? Because I think we can all concur, mainframe is the heart of organization. So much information and data within there of decades and decades of information, which is ultimately the lifeblood of all enterprises today. So I don't know, Raoul, why don't you kick off and kind of, from an AWS Atos perspective, how are you going to help me kind of de-risk this? How do I position this, across the organization to kick off that planning, as you said?
Yeah. So in order for you to, so this is a nice segue for what I explained in the previous response. So first of all, we really need to understand the business objectives of what customer is trying to accomplish, and try to understand and connect that, right? Like I'll give you an example, right? Like around 10 years back when we were doing the modernization, it was all about how do we extract the data and use that data to introduce new digital services to the customers. And it was more around real-time replication of the data, augmenting the mainframe with building new capabilities outside the mainframe. But as the time progresses over the last 18 months, what we are seeing is more around how do I accelerate the mainframe modernization? Because customers have been rewriting manually these applications over the last decade, as Vivek mentioned, and these are going very slow. And it's taking years and years, and sometimes business get tired of this modernization, and they basically will say, how long does it take to exit the mainframe? There are scenarios where customers are trying to exit for 5 years, and sometimes they see the mainframe cost share going up. They also see the cloud cost share going up. And they'll come back and say, we'll continue to do this modernization. Are we really getting to the business outcomes what we're looking for? The way I approach this is, especially with the advent of AI and Gen AI, we really need to kind of understand where to start. So earlier, it used to take 6 to 8 months for us to kind of really assess and dissect the current state of the mainframe and put together a migration plan, whether it is starting where to start, how do you decompose, how do you migrate. Now, with the advent of AI, actually, there is a lot of advancements, both with Atos and all the partners, where we will be able to shrink that 6 months timeline into a less than a month to understand your current state of the mainframe. And it is not only understanding the technical components and the monolith nature of your application, you could actually extract 30-year-old legacy business logic and try to understand what these applications does today in less than a week. So with the advent of these technologies and accelerators coming in, we can actually reduce the risk dramatically to accelerate the mainframe modernization. And as well as testing and proving these applications are working as it sits today, so that you can actually have a confidence to auditors and regulators. You will be able to introduce AI-driven testing, so that you will be able to accelerate test case data generation, test case generation and all, so that you will be able to accelerate this modernization, so that reduce the risk of the modernization by proper assessment, extracting the business logic, and as well as automating the testing processes, and as well as reducing the cost of the modernization and accelerating the time to modernize. So all of these are great advantages now we have, which we didn't have around 18 to 24 months back. And that is a great way to start thinking about how to introduce these capabilities to reduce the risk and get started.
I mean, that's amazing to go from 6-8 months to a month's assessment.
Yep.
So if I'm an enterprise, I think one of the challenges has always been, I've got this big machine here, it's a mainframe, it's got a load of data, I'm suffering from potentially skill shortage, I've got to keep the lights on, it's challenging me agility, but it's so integral to my business. To actually move this along to kind of be into a modern architecture like the cloud, my concern would be it's going to take so much time just to assess where I am and how would I necessarily do the planning. To hear that could be potentially done in a month. Obviously, each customer is very different, but to do that assessment, I also recognized as well, both yourself, Raul, and Vivek smiling, you clearly have significant experience in kind of going through these programs as well, and have kind of seen the good, bad, and different. So Vivek, why don't you walk us through kind of with that month's assessment? We do this assessment. So what's next? How do we? I'm an enterprise. I get the information back from the assessment. What does that tell me? And how do I scope that up from a business standpoint and then go, yeah, we now have a plan to modernize? Why don't you take us through the next steps?
Sure. So I think given the complexity and the criticality of any mainframe modernization project, I think the assessment is really where the foundation gets set. And as Rao very lucidly explained, it is critical to be able to do it with the right level of insight into various dimensions, so that you are able to then create a detailed and comprehensive plan for transformation, one of which includes choosing the right option for transformation. Because as Rao mentioned in his earlier response, customers have different priorities. So one customer could possibly be looking at exiting their mainframe because there is an impending contract or a license renewal in about 18 to 24 months, in which case the most viable option is to look at rehosting these applications into some kind of an emulated environment using a variety of tools, which ensure that you are able to get out without impacting really the functionality and ensuring business continuity while you are able to meet your timeline and requirement of moving away from the mainframe itself. However, if the customer really has the option and the time available, then we can help make the choice around whether the application needs to be refactored so that you can move and deploy it onto any kind of a cloud, or to rewrite or reimagine the application if it's kind of met its end of life from a functionality perspective and needs a complete overhaul, in which case there is no point in investing in refactoring that application and reliving that same application and then trying to renew it subsequently. So the assessment creates a great pivot for us to help the customer make the right choice, aligned with their business objectives, their business context, and also all the constraints that are available in terms of time, cost, and the overall complexity and the associated risk. Once that's done, you are able to then categorize these applications into different buckets and then help the customer on a journey with a suite of tools that we at Atos have built and invested over more than a decade now, which work in conjunction with the AWS Transform for mainframe modernization from AWS. So that combined power then supports the journey of transformation. One of the final point that I want to make is that any such program is critically dependent on a very robust mechanism for program management. And we at Atos and AWS have combined our methodology to bring the best of both the worlds to ensure that you are tracking every risk, every dependency in a timely manner to ensure that you are able to kind of deliver these programs without any hiccups, and then meet the business objectives in terms of timelines, cost for the customer, and ensuring performance and functional equivalence, to say the least. And I think this approach has helped Atos create a consistent zero rollback and 100% on-time delivery record for mainframe modernization for more than 2 years now. And in fact, we recently have received a CSAT of 10 out of 10 from a customer where we help them shut down a mainframe, which talks in itself about the maturity and the rigor that goes in delivering these projects at Atos and AWS together.
Wow. And so that sounds great. So I've got the opportunity to do an assessment with 1 month. That gives me my technical point in time view around the mainframe, the workloads, then the potential to refactor, reimagine. I love the reimagine as well, right? Because reimagine is around how to potentially drive innovation and growth with AWS and Atos, and then be able to tie that quite tightly within business outcomes and KPIs. So not only do I understand technically the assessment at that point in time, it also allows me to go back to the enterprise to essentially drive the business case aligned to the strategy and outcomes of that business. And understand that, across industries, verticals, businesses, those outcomes, will be different from one to another. That sounds wonderful, but I hear lots of things about myths, right? You can't do this, you can't do this, and you don't want to go from the mainframe, and what about the risk associated to that? There's lots of myths within that, and I guess that's where one of the challenges has been around accelerating time to value and being able to move from the mainframe to the cloud. So Vivek, what are kind of the crazy myths that you've heard, and how do you kind of reimagine and kind of give a bit of proof points around the things that you see from customers and also the technologies and the businesses? So
okay, so that's that's an interesting one. And I think from a myths perspective, anything and everything that you could imagine goes as a myth. The first one probably being that you can never move out of the mainframe. Second, you can never match the performance of what a mainframe provides to you. Third, the cloud solution or any transformed application would come at a cost which would never allow you to have a viable business case for moving out of the mainframe. Fourth, you will never get it right the first time. You will always miss your timeline. You will always be over budget. And finally, how will you ensure that the transformed application actually meets the same functionality? Where have you got the people? So you will never be able to do it. I think it's more about skepticism in most instances, and without really understanding where technology has gone and how far it has progressed to be able to alleviate some of the critical challenges that most people have faced in their earlier endeavors to transform mainframe applications. And these myths are possibly coming out of experiences of past. So I don't kind of blame these myths for being there, but I think the world, as Rao was saying, has moved on, and as technology has progressed, some of these can be absolutely certainly smashed and killed.
Great, thank you, Vivek. Rao, what any crazy myths you've heard specifically with some of the customers that you speak on a daily basis?
Yeah, so Vivek kind of highlighted most of them anyway. I don't want to repeat. One of the things that basically said is, hey, mainframes power the highly scalable transactions, and I don't think cloud could ever match the scale of the mainframes. But if you look at the Amazon, we are the number one retailer in the world, and everything runs on the cloud. So I actually have the privilege to work on both the mainframes for decades and also has on the cloud now. And I've seen both the best advantages of both sides of the world. So I don't really attribute anything to the actual either cloud or mainframe. It's really about how do you architect the systems. And I have done a very highly scalable point of sale application on the mainframe. At the same time, the highly scalable retail application, which is on the AWS. But if you really look into it, it's all about how do you architect these applications to scale. So I think it's all about the knowledge that you have, and to make sure you apply those knowledges to build these applications for the future state, so that we can go down and resolve one of these myths, and you prove to the customer saying that this is how it should be done. These are the examples it was done in the past. And let's sit down and talk through it and explain. And let's take a small pilot or a POC or a prototype and prove it before taking a big journey, right? So there is always North Star to exit the mainframe, but we can't really talk about North Star. Let's talk about what is the first pilot we can go and prove that that myth is not right, and then go one step at a time. I think that's how we can get the confidence from the customers and keep it moving. But as Vivek explained, all the myths has been proven wrong over time, and we have many customer success stories both within AWS and Atos and also jointly. And we can help customers kind of walk through these myths and explain and show the success stories and gain their confidence and start building the first pilots and then move on paving the journey for the North Star, which is ultimate modernization and exit the mainframe.
No, great. And one thing which I hugely admire from Amazon's perspective is their position around sustainability, not just in their retail business, but also their cloud business. Where does sustainability fit with regard to modernization from mainframe to cloud?
So I'll take that question. Within the AWS and as well as Amazon overall, we have taken a pledge to be very highly aligned to the ESG, environmental and social governance. And I'll give you an example, right? So I'll make it a little bit broader in terms of on-prem data operations in average versus cloud operations. Any customer that moves to cloud, we actually identified that we are 4.1 times more efficient by running in the data centers, both from the energy point of view, because AWS is now 100% running on renewable energy in beginning 2023 and 2024. So we are 100% running on renewable energy, and we pledge to be water positive by end of 2030. We are already there, pretty close, 53% of the journey, we are already there. And number three, we are 99% carbon footprint reduction. And the way how we build our data centers, how we operate our data centers, and as well as how we deploy the Graviton chips to efficiently use the power, efficiently cool the systems, and as well as reduce the carbon footprint. So we are helping the organizations in their ESG pledge to be carbon neutral, to empower the organizations in that journey by migrating to the cloud. And so modernization is part of that puzzle. So how do you optimize your applications to reduce less energy and highly efficient? So
fantastic. Thank you, Rob. So this has been really good. I've learned a lot as well around being able to go from what was preceding a 6 to 8 month assessment to 1 month assessment, to be able to understand the technical point in time view of where your mainframe and associated workloads sit, tie that to the business outcomes as part of the assessment to help you drive out a enterprise business case. We've debunked the myths. Thank you, Vivek and Rao, in doing that as well. And most importantly, for the future of our generation and future generations, of being able to do it in a very sustainable way. That's been great. I'm going to put both of you on point now, Vivek and Rao. Kind of give me that one sentence that is a good takeaway for our listeners today to the podcast of episode 1, COBOL to Cloud. Rao, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, this is a very good question. I hear this a lot. So I think a lot of times, since mainframes are here for 30 years or more than 3 decades, we always get bogged down into where to start, what to do, and is like, how do I get my business case approved? Don't think about thinking like a 5-10 year journey on the day one. And you have to be agile and you have to start doing things now. So what I would say is understand what your business objectives is for 2026 and see how you can align mainframe modernization initiatives aligned to your business objectives, whether it is cost reduction, innovation, agility, and identify set of the pilots and set of applications and start planning now. you can get started because there are many tools that you can self-empower himself by working with AWS and Atos. We can help you get started with that. And you don't have to think about, hey, how do I exit mainframe? That's a big thing. But at least start with what can I do in 2026 to help achieve my business outcomes. And that's the number one step I would take.
Thank you, Rao. And Vivek, final words for you, sir?
Yeah, I think I echo what Rao just mentioned, that I think don't look at the elephant in total. Look at small pieces which make most value or deliver most value for you as a customer. And if you're not sure as to where to start, with our mature assessment methodology backed by powerful tooling, I think we can help you identify very specific use cases and areas to focus on to commence the first steps in a journey which might look very, very humongous to start with, but when planned and thought through carefully, can deliver you excellent results and also help fast track your transformation journey as a customer.
Brilliant. That really kind of summarizes episode 1 of our series of AWS and Atos mainframe to modernization to cloud, road to AWS reInvent. I've been Simon Withers at Atos. I've been joined by Vivek Jindar, as well as Rel Panchmarti from AWS. That was our episode 1. We do have the next episode, which is kind of give you a view around pathways to patterns and pathways, choosing the right modernization approach for your mainframe to cloud capability. Thank you very much. We hope you enjoyed the podcast. We're really super excited. AWS reInvent's just going to literally be a blink of an eye around the corner at the end of November, at the start of December, which the team will be here. We'll be present in Vegas, and come and join us. Come to our booth and talk to us about mainframe to cloud modernization. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Vivek. Talk to you later.